Welcome, everybody, to Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker, back at you with another interactive class out of the secret library of the Connected Universe. Yes, we are live this week. I know the last couple of weeks we have not been. I've come on, done a little intro, and then we've done an earlier show, an archive show. But I've taken ones that were from the back end of the secret library of the Connected Universe, ones that had only previously been seen by members, so giving the public a little taste of some of those other episodes that had been recorded. I'd done those live for the members or the time travelers, as it were, back then. Tonight we're going to be covering disclosure portals and the supernatural. So we're going to be getting into a lot of different topics this evening. I when I was describing it to Jen, I described it as a variety show, and so she was wondering if I was going to do gong show type stuff. I'm going to get up here and do bizarre things. No, that is not what is happening. But over this time, had a lot of questions come in about a lot of different topics. And so we're going to get into a number of different things this evening. For those that are wondering, where the heck has Mike been? Why hasn't he been live? Well, I did explain it at the beginning of those other videos, but just to refresh some memories, I am in the final stages of putting together my next book, Portals to the Stars. We're going to cover that a little bit this evening. So yeah, that is Portals to the Stars Inside, Stargates, Atlantis, and Secrets of Ancient Egypt. So I'm really excited about this book. Again, this has been a passion project. There was, again, when I went to Egypt earlier this year to hold the Stargates of Ancient Egypt tour, things changed. Egypt always seems to inspire me to do other things. So we're going to talk a little bit about portals this evening, of course. I see some people are already starting to come down into the chat here. Karen's in the house. Great to see you, Karen. There's Jack McCarthy, my former coworker there at TA. Hey, I was just talking with Ted the other day. So I hope you guys are doing well over there. Tom is in the house, as well as Helen. Great to see you all and others that are coming in. So a couple quick things here before we get started. For those listening to the podcast version of this later, I do encourage you to join us every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com for the live presentation. Usually, again, last couple of weeks, I've been a little MIA, but have still uploaded some things for you. But come out here, ask the questions, get involved, join the community. So much going on out here at the Connected Universe Portal, connecteduniverseportal.com. Of course, we do run this particular class part way on YouTube, like, maybe 3/4 of it. And then we have the after show afterwards. That's members only. But then in the secret library of the Connected Universe Portal, we've got the community area. We've got the monthly Q&A. We've got the Egypt, Ireland, American Southwest videos, all kinds of material that is back there to soak up to your heart's content. So a lot going on out there, connecteduniverseportal.com. Other things that are going on, I'm going to have links for this down in the description here. A lot that is going on. So we do have this one first, Connecting Universe Portals to the Stars event. So for those that want to get a hold of the new book, a signed copy, the very first place that I am signing copies of these will be the Portals to the Stars event, Rahway, New Jersey, at the Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum. And Rahway is RAHWAY, New Jersey. That's November 9th. And this is a large special presentation. So it's a 4-part presentation. We're going to be there for the afternoon, talking a lot of wonderful esoteric topics. I'll have the new book there to sign. We're going to be talking stargates, portals, ancient symbolism, the Egypt-Atlantis connection, triangle areas of the world, consciousness, and time travel. So a lot of wonderful stuff. Please come out, and that will be where you can get your hands on signed copies of the book. And that will be my only book signing until 2025. So you might want to come get it. Then, of course, we have the Germany tour next April 14th to 23rd, 2025. This is Mysteries of the Black Forest. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have an absolutely amazing time out there in the Black Forest, touring the area, exploring castles, We're going to be drinking some real German beer, of course. And we got the cuckoo clocks and all that wonderful stuff out there. We're going to be following the trail of the Brothers Grimm and what those stories really meant. And then I also have some personal ancestral connections back to that area as well. So that is going to be a lot of fun. Again, you can find all this information, MikeRicksecker.com. Go to my events page there, and you can find direct links to that. I also have the links down in the description. And finally, not an official announcement yet, Stargates of Ancient Egypt 3, next November 11th to 23rd, 2025. Got the banner art is complete. The itinerary is set. Just waiting on Mohammed to put together the registration page, and off we will go with the next Egypt tour. So I know many of you have actually expressed interest in that. So definitely looking forward to seeing all of you out there. And last but not least, I do have to congratulate my daughter, Ariel. She was just recently engaged here to her longtime boyfriend, Tyler. When she called, we were on a video call, just her face was so glowing. She was so happy, and I'm really, really happy for her. So I guess they're going to be looking at a date in 2026. And so congratulations, Ariel and Tyler. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I see others, yes, are dropping into the chat here. There's Android Paranormal, Joe Rivera's in the house. Great to see you all down there. Okay, so over these past few weeks, especially with the Antarctica class that we did here a few weeks back, I had a lot of questions about disclosure. What's my opinion on disclosure? Is disclosure coming? What's going on in our skies? All of this sort of stuff. And so this is really what I really wanted to lead off with this particular week was talking about what is going on in our skies. We've had some interesting things come out this year, like the Harvard research team suggesting that some of these UFOs and UAPs may be something that's indigenous to our planet, that's just from another dimension, which not a new concept. Many of us have been talking about that potential idea for years, going all the way back to Jacques Vallée in the 50s and 60s. He was talking about that, and we just did a recent Ancient Aliens episode on that, on him. But yeah, the idea that there's a interdimensional component to this is not new. And then Lou Elizondo just came out with his new book. So people are again talking about all of this. And the big question, when is disclosure happening? And so it really, to me, depends on what is your definition of disclosure. So for a craft to land on the White House lawn and little green men to walk out and say, hello, leader. I mean, is that what we're looking for? Or are we looking for the government to admit, yeah, there's stuff? Well, they're kind of already doing that, which is a really big step. Although I personally don't like the way they're doing it, because I see what's going on, having been involved with the government in some different capacities over the years, 6 years in the military, and then other things I've been involved with off and on over the years. It's all about the story and the narrative that they want to share. Now, decades ago, like the big UFO flaps of the late 40s and the 1950s, they put together Project Blue Book, what's going on with this phenomenon. The government did everything that they could to basically quash the whole idea of UFOs, objects in the skies, extraterrestrials, all of this. Even though they put together Project Blue Book, they had J. Allen Hynek in place to really debunk everything. But along the way, Hynek ended up saying, well, wait a minute. A lot of this I really can't explain, even though I can explain this one, 13,000 cases. 700 of them were never closed. They were never explained. Now, the modern government It really isn't acknowledging any of those old cases at all. They're kind of really taking things from about 2000 and onward. We're just going to kind of ignore everything that happened beforehand. In those older times, those decades beforehand, I say older, I was born in one of those decades. um, a lot of the material that was coming forth from the public. I mean, eyewitness accounts, sure. Uh, Stories that people were saying of interactions that they had, sure. Photos that they shared were sketchy. They were blurry. They weren't in focus. They might have been of the night sky with you're just seeing like orbs of light on there, and that could be anything, right? Some of these videos that were taken, same thing. And so it was really hard to discern exactly what was in that media footage. And so it was very, very easy for the government to say nothing, nothing, it's nothing, it's nothing. It's weather balloons. That was usually the excuse that they would use. It's weather balloons. Okay, great. Well, in this day and age, they can't use that excuse anymore. Sure, there was one photo there from a plane in the sky. They took a photo of a mylar balloon. I think it was a Batman balloon, and people were saying it was a UFO. And you could just zoom in on it. It was, oh, it's a mylar balloon. But the fact that we had the capability to be able to zoom in on it, that it had enough resolution to be able to do that, okay, great. We were able to debunk that one. But everybody's walking around with one of these days, a cell phone here. And cell phones right now have HD or better cameras in the newer ones. And of course, cell phone companies do everything they can to get you on the newer products. They're going to be 4K or better, but at least HD. And a lot of people will actually put their settings on HD because it just, smaller file size, that sort of thing. But others like to go the 4K route, and now you're seeing these other higher resolutions come out. So everybody is able to take some really, really good photos and videos and things like this these days. So the government can no longer deny this footage that's coming out. So, okay, we can't deny it anymore. We will go ahead and admit there's something in the skies that we can't explain. There's something. Maybe it's technology from our adversaries across the world. And so that's kind of one area where they've kind of spooked us a little bit. Maybe it's technology from China or something like this. And yeah, it was a little it got us a little nerve wracked there. Was it last year, the year before, when they had the Chinese spy balloons coming over the country, and they were just like, we're not going to do anything about it. We'll just let it float out there, So they've kind of spooked us in that regard there. Maybe it's that. But some of these things they have said we can't explain it. So the fact that they have taken that step is a good step, but they want to do everything they can to control the narrative of it. So, okay, we're having a congressional hearing. That's wonderful. We're getting the powers that be to sit down and actually talk about it and actually discuss it. That is definitely a good step. But those who have been involved in this for years, there's no new information there. We're talking about sightings in the sky. We've been talking about that. The footage that was shared there in the congressional hearings, we've seen it. The idea that the government has retrieved crash debris from UFOs. We've been talking about that since Roswell. So everything that they're doing right now is basically to control that narrative as much as they can. We're going to control the story. So they do something like they put together, the Arrow site. Okay, this is AARO. This is where if you have had an experience, if you've seen something in the sky, all of that, you're supposed to go there and report it. But there's a catch. You have to be a government employee. So it's not really a full reporting system. It is only if you are a member of the government. Now, that in itself is, and not just because, we're talking politicians and, can't trust a politician as far as you can throw one. Um, but having been in the military, and I know they've tried to say, we want to create a safe space here for, for military members and other government officials to be able to report things. But, it's when you are in that position, if you I want to say the wrong thing. You say the wrong thing. It's basically you have to be really, really careful with the words that you choose, the way that you describe things, all of that, because yeah, in one sense, you could be legitimately reporting something. On the other hand, you could find yourself going down to mental health and having your security clearance pulled. That's why when I was in Alaska, nobody really talked about, outside in the greater scheme of things, why nobody outside of our office area, and there were a couple of different, I want to say, sections down there. Because there was the comm center, there was our group, WIMIX, there were a couple others that were down there. So there were several personnel bodies that were down there. But we weren't going to take our reports of shadow entities and things like this that we were seeing moving in or around the office. We weren't taking that up the chain of command, because you say the wrong thing to the wrong person and boom, security clearance pulled, you're down to mental health. So it was amongst us airmen and maybe your supervisor, but like NCOICs or maybe, maybe a division chief or something like that. No, you're not saying anything. So, people still have that, of course. So again, but this is only government bodies that are allowed to report there. They have a little disclaimer down there. Hey, if you are a civilian pilot, report it to the FAA. Now, what about the average civilian who's sitting in the backyard and all of a sudden right over the top of your backyard, there's something overhead? Well, you can report it to MUFON. That's fine. MUFON has done an amazing job over the years, but that's not going to be seen by Aero. That's not going to go on any of those official reports. That's going to like the congressional hearings and all that stuff. So it doesn't make much sense to me that, if you're trying to make sense of what's going on, you're saying we don't know what's going on in our airspace. It might even be enemies. Then why wouldn't you try to get as much data as possible to try to figure out what's going on? Why would you limit yourself? Because the majority of UFO and UAP sightings are by civilians. And we are much more open to bringing that to the forefront because we don't have in the back of our heads, I might get my security clearance pulled. I might be taken down to mental health. We don't have that. I mean, we did, 60, 70, 80 years ago when, if you're talking, hearing voices, seeing aliens, seeing shadows, you might find yourself in a straitjacket in a mental institution, but that's gone these days. That is gone. And we're a lot more open to telling people what we've seen, but they're not taking any of that, which is a real shame. So I see a lot of comments coming in here. Jen's in the house. Great to see you, my love. Jason Thompson from Atlanta in the house as well. Great to see you, Jason. All right. Let's see. Android Paranormal. Mike, phones are set to record video at just 1080, which is HD by default, and many people do not know to change it. That's why most videos are not good. Also, most don't know to switch to the optical zoom lens. That's true. Yeah, it does. Most phones default to 1080p HD. I've changed mine to 4K at times, depending on what I'm recording. But I think some of the newer ones are starting to default to the 4K, if I'm not mistaken. But that's why I always say, people are walking around with HD or better cameras. It's not like it's not like back in the 80s where, you might have your Kodak Instamatic camera. Maybe you have a Pentax and you're doing something at 35 millimeter. Polaroids, things like that, and just they're not really coming out very well. So that, and right away when you click, did it get it? Click, did it get it? And back then you just kind of cross your fingers and hoped you got it on camera. Yeah. So, all right. Tom, just about anything you post can be scrutinized, and usually does. Truth is always censored by the public as well as the government. Yeah, it's kind of the Wild West out there in a lot of ways. You can throw stuff out there and anybody can throw anything out there, but then now you have all the fact checking stuff that's coming around. So, which is really a kind of a bizarre thing, because in a way that is a form of censorship. But I've also seen things that, and some of it, yeah, they do get correct. Yes, this is an incorrect. What this person is saying is an incorrect thing if you go through the fact checker. But there are also some other things that fact checkers are saying are incorrect when they're actually correct. So it's really, really a bizarre moment in time. And some of that fact checking is done by AI. And I'm sorry, AI is not 100% correct. I mean, it does a great job, like ChatGPT, in writing something very eloquent. You can certainly use it to analyze data. Here's a data set. Tell me this is the type of information that I want out of it. What is this data set telling us? And boom, have AI run through it. I mean, we've been doing that with database programming, things like that for 50 years. People think AI is like a new thing. No, and AI has been around a long, long time. It's getting more sophisticated these days, but it's been around a long, long time. But many times when I've tried to use, like, very simple thing. First time I ever tried ChatGPT, who is Mike Ricksecker? And it wrote something very nice. It's like, oh, this would make for a nice bio on my webpage, on my website, except for the fact that half of the data was incorrect. It was talking about books that I hadn't written, television shows that I had not been on, other things that it did get correct of books I had written and shows that I'd been on. Got some personal things right about, like, being from Cleveland originally and things like that. But there are a lot of other facts that it just got wrong. And I tried it multiple times and it would go out there and pull other information. And again, it was like a 50-50 split, maybe 60-40 correct and incorrect. So we have to be careful with that. If we're going to use AI, check it. I mean, it might write up something like really nice and wonderful that you can use. And just doing a Google search is AI, but check, fact check it yourself. All right. So that was the disclosure piece that I wanted to discuss this evening. Some other topics that I want to talk about. So, portals to the stars. All right, I do want to talk a bit about portals this evening. Portals to the stars, inside stargates, Atlantis, and secrets of ancient Egypt. I'm going to do a fuller presentation on this when the book is released. We're looking end of October. So October 22nd or 29th, depends on how things go. Being my own publisher, running Haunted Road Media, where I publish several other authors, I have a lot of flexibility in that. I really would have liked everything to have been done now, but it's not, and I'm trying to get it all done for that Portals to the Stars event. So I had the book on hand for the event, of which the event is named for the book, of course. Real quick though, the whole Inside Stargates Atlantis. So it's not a sponsored video, but I am an advocate for Atlantis Nutrition. So I do have a link down in the description, but their gummy supplements are really they're really good. I'm a sucker for gummies anyways. So if you're going to give me a gummy that's actually nutritious as well, that is amazing. So that one's the super greens. That one's the fiber prebiotic. They got a whole bunch of them. They sent me some magnesium ones here and some other stuff. So check it out. AtlantisNutrition.com, and I have use the code Ricksecker10. You'll get 10% off your order. So again, it's not a sponsored video. I'm throwing it out there. To me, I find it ironic. I in many videos that I've posted here, many classes that we've done, I've talked about it in books. I got a book coming out talking about Atlantis, and end up in this partnership with Atlantis Nutrition. So that's the universe for you. So, okay. And Jen is saying the magnesium was yummy. That's pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. Karen down here, I knew for a long time what Area 51 is, not for nuclear, but for dead aliens, UFO. What's interesting about that is, and see, this is the way of the government, right? We've been talking about Area 51 for decades. I kept denying. Finally, 10 years ago now, the CIA some CIA document was released that actually showed, yes, Area 51 is real. It does exist. We knew that. It's crazy. But yeah, this book here, what we're covering in this, talking obviously stargates, portals in the wilderness. Like we had Ronnie LeBlanc on back in the spring talking about that at length. And he actually has a contribution to the book. We're talking Earth energy, stone circles, portals in the American Southwest. So yeah, all my stuff there from like Chaco Canyon and Montezuma's Well, Sedona's in there. We've got chapter on stargates around the world, of course. Stargates of ancient Egypt. Well, that's the tour, right? And we got to talk about what the tour actually is, stargates of ancient Egypt, and the stargates that are actually there. And then we get into that Atlantis and Egypt connection. So, and I do have videos out here on that, but this is, of course, more in depth and some really, really fascinating details that have come out within that. You go into the ancient Egyptian texts on Atlantis. Now, they did not call it Atlantis, of course, because they were Egyptian. Well, Egyptians didn't even call themselves Egyptians. Now, that's the Greeks. That's a Greek influence right there. The Greeks called them Egyptians. The Greeks called it Atlantis. It was a homeland of the primeval ones. And when you actually go through the texts, which are part of which are at Edfu, much of the text has been lost to time because the temples are no longer there. Like the Temple of Sais, gone. Heliopolis, gone. But we do find in some other areas or within that text, we find some information there on the Shining Ones. So Dr. Heather Lynn has contributed a little bit on the Shining Ones. I have some other contributors throughout it as well, which has been, it's been a lot of fun. I'm really under the gun to finish the book off, but it's been a lot of fun to write about all of this. And so I do get into like, okay, what's the difference between a stargate and a portal? Because I'm talking, okay, portals to the stars, I'm talking stargates. There is a difference here. So when we talk portals, we're talking about something that is naturally occurring. It occurs naturally in nature. So, and there's some different varieties here. One that I usually point out, and actually I did not bring the slide up here for some reason, but I've used it before. Many of you have seen this. When we talk to X points, for those that are unfamiliar, X points are naturally occurring portals out in space between us and the sun. It's basically that area where the Earth's magnetic sphere hits the solar wind. I mean, they intermingle really all the way down from that initial point in space all the way down to the planet's surface. The ground kind of stops the solar wind from going any further into the planet, right? So they're intermingling all that way, but then initial spot where they first like really converge together like that, scientists and researchers started when they're observing space, noticing these. They, in their words, NASA called them portals. Okay, what are these portals? Then they decided to call them X points. And basically, what they're doing is, as those protons and electrons are interacting with the magnetism from the Earth, it's opening these, again, portals. And they open at different sizes, different intervals. Like there's no predictive model for this at all. They don't know when they're going to open. And when they do, it might open a small one, it might open a large one. They don't know how long it's going to stay open for. They've sent satellites up there to observe this almost 10 years now. And there's still really no predictive model as far as when it's going to open. It's just when one does and they're able to detect, oh, portal's open, then they're able to, get some information, but they can't tell you when it's going to close. And what these type of portals do is they allow the protons and electrons from the solar wind to enter into the ionosphere of the Earth at a quicker rate. So when we get those massive solar flares coming off the sun, we're going to see some auroras from that. But if we get that solar flare and one of those portals open up, we're going to get a much more vivid type of aurora. So that's a naturally occurring portal. So the idea of a stargate, and again, we have these portals, they're going to happen all the way down to the Earth's surface as those two things, Earth's magnetism and the protons and electrons from the solar wind, as they interact. Yeah, we're going to have portals open up in midair. Is that where some of these missing planes have gone? Is that what, like Bruce Gernon down on the Bermuda Triangle, when he had his, basically he jumped forward in time by, at least a half an hour. It's probably closer to 45 minutes. Is that what happened to him? Very possible. When people go missing out in the wilderness, and some of them, never come back. We can't really say what happened to them. Did they step through a portal? Did they disappear somewhere to another point in time, to somewhere else in the cosmos, to some other dimension? Some of these people that do actually come back, some of their stories are fascinating, where they say, I heard, some noises off in the woods, took 2 steps off the path to take a look, couldn't find what the source of the noise was, turned back to get on the path, and the path is gone. So what happened? What, they stepped through a portal there? Is that what happened? So those are naturally occurring portals. Stargate is the ability of an intelligent being to be able to harness a portal and be able to use it for their own means. So, and I said intelligent being because it doesn't necessarily have to be human. It could be, could be an extraterrestrial life form. It could be some sort of interdimensional being. And oh, by the way, you could have interdimensional extraterrestrials. So there's a lot of different options that we have here, and ones that are on Earth. This is another one that always throws me off. When people talk about extraterrestrials living in another dimension here on Earth. Well, if they're living here on Earth and they've been living here for a long time, then they wouldn't be extraterrestrials. They'd actually be Earthlings. One term that we use sometimes is ultra-terrestrial, which is basically something indigenous to Earth, living in another dimension here. But I always get a kick when people talk about the extraterrestrials living in another dimension here on Earth, because it's like, well, I mean, if they just came here, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, okay, sure. If they came from space, from another dimension, they set up shop here, sure, okay. But, if they've been here hundreds, thousands of years, living in another dimension beside us, but they would actually be Earthlings. At what point, when we had all these people immigrate into the United States, at what point were we no longer an immigrant and became an American? Right? At that point of naturalization, if you go through that whole process, and still, even then, if you had gone through that process and you still carried the accents, and even if you're like second generation, like, maybe your parents, came over and, you're here, there still might be a little bit of a connotation there of, you're still like the outsider, but a few generations down the road, and that's no longer the case. You become a person of that land. So yeah, I would say that they're Earthlings, right? So yeah, a Stargate is the ability of one of these intelligent beings in the universe being able to harness that and control it themselves, to be able to say, all right, I want to open this portal, open this wormhole, open this gateway to go to, whether it's somewhere else in the cosmos, somewhere else in the universe, could be somewhere else in the planet, could be to another dimension, could be to another point in time. They would have control over it. So that's a bit of chapter 1 right there. What is a Stargate? So I gave you a little preview of the book. So another little preview of the book actually came in. Oh, and this is the other thing that I wanted to say before we get into the next little preview was I did want to point out that humans are trying to create these in the lab. This was from almost 2 years ago now. The scientists had created a baby wormhole in the lab. And it was on the quantum level, very, very small, very, very tiny. They created 2 baby black holes on the quantum level, connected them with a wormhole, and sent a message across. Very minute in scale, but it's the beginning. This is the starting point of humans trying to create their own portals and create their own stargates. So instead of trying to harness what does exist, these particular scientists were trying to create their own. And they did. By just sending a message. And I always laugh at this because the reporters covering this, ask them, well, could you send like a dog through there? And, scientists are laughing at them like, no, we're not sending a dog through. Very, very small scale for one. Secondly, why are we starting with a living organism? They started with a message, send a message through. Maybe, when they get a bigger one, send a probe through. Send a living organism right off the bat. I mean, come on. So, okay. Another type of preview of the upcoming book was actually if you guys caught it, I made a post on this. And again, I have the link down there in the description below. Pretty sure I put the link to this. I might have forgotten the link for this, but I will. I will go ahead and add it in there if I didn't put it. Eerie Expeditions Magazine. This is the premiere issue, which covered Romania. So you see here, The Birth of Vampires, Haunted Transylvania. And you got Vlad the Impaler right on the cover. So I wrote a article for this on Hoia Baciu Forest, which for those that don't know, this is a forest that has had many disappearances, many hauntings, many legends coming out of this. There is a barren spot in the middle of the forest where nothing grows. I mean, it's a little grass grows there. That's about it. But no trees. It's this clearing. Some people call it the dead zone. And a lot of the locals just refuse to go there. This is one that, for those that are familiar with Amy's Crypt, Amy has been to Hoia Baciu a couple times now, and so she contributed a little bit on this, not for this particular article in this magazine, but for Portals to the Stars, because I have a much more expansive and extended version of that. But there are a lot of really interesting and fascinating legends that come out of this. Like the reason it's called Hoia Baciu, where there was a shepherd boy named Baciu. He had 200 sheep, goes into the forest. He and the sheep are never seen again. Now, shepherd boy going lost in the forest, fine. 200 sheep, not so sure about that. That's a lot of sheep for one. Plus, we're talking about over 1,000 years ago. So, sheep would have been high commodity back then, especially, out in a rural area like that. They would have been, like gold to any other shepherds and farmers in the area. So people would have been interested in 200 sheep. But they all go missing in the forest. Where did they go? And then there's a little 5-year-old girl who was walking in the forest one day, doesn't come out. She's missing. Nobody knows what happens to her. The townsfolk go in there looking for her, can't find her. And then one day, 5 years later, she comes walking right back out of the forest as if nothing had happened. Has not aged, wearing the exact same clothes. What happened there? Did she step through some sort of uh, portal that took her to another point in time 5 years ahead? So, yes, it's a legend of the area, but those legends and lores and tales, have that element of truth within them. I skipped one. I skipped the topic I wanted to talk about. Well, we can go back to it. It's fine. We've got a good 20 minutes left in the show. But in any case, yeah, Eerie Expeditions magazine. So this is a great one to pick up, especially going into it's the fall season. Halloween's coming up, all that. You want to pick that up. And it's essentially Eerie Expeditions it's a travel magazine. So it's a travel magazine for more kind of spooky, haunted, supernatural. It basically has that supernatural and paranormal type of angle on it. But it's a travel magazine. Check out some of your comments down here. Yeah, Jack, I agree. Kindly hit the button. Kindly hit the button and share if you would, please. Rugged Sources in the house. Great to see you. Yeah. And then so something was on the History Channel taken off. Okay. So what I also wanted to cover here, because we did talk about portals here in this, but this is this particular topic has been thrown at me a couple times here in recent days, probably because it's a topic I've written a book about. But last week, I was on Christina Gomez's Strange Paradigm show. I have a link for this down in the description as well. UFOs, portals, and shadow entities. So we talked a lot about portals, a lot of what we just talked about. We previewed the book a little bit. But because of my book, A Walk in the Shadows, and a lot of the work that I've done there, she also had some questions about shadow people. And one of the questions that she threw at me, she actually featured this as a reel on her social media as well, was in asking about types of shadow beings, type of shadow people, and are there ones that are more benevolent in nature? And I was really happy that she asked that question, because too many times people go down the route of they're all dark, they're all evil, they're the darkest of the dark, the most evil of all evil entities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I've done a lot in that book to try to dispel that notion. Now, are there ones that are nasty, mean, and nefarious? Yes, there are. But just like human beings, these shadow entities, some are good, some are bad. Most are really just in the middle. They're rather benign. They're neither evil nor good. Most of them are just watching and observing. A lot of them are just passing through. Like, you might be in the kitchen and see one walk down the hall, and you're like, what the heck was that? Just passing through. Or it may have been, a bit of a time slip. We've talked about on the time travel classes and episodes here, we've talked about the shadow being time slips, where it's just you're tuning into a frequency, really, you're not fully tuning into it. And like the one with the doppelganger boy. So boy walks into a kitchen one day and sees standing over by the kitchen table a tall, dark, hooded figure, scares him to death, runs out of the kitchen, and becomes the hooded shadow person story of the household. Years later, he's a young man now. He's in the kitchen making a sandwich at the kitchen table, and he's wearing a hoodie. And all of a sudden, he sees walking into the kitchen doorway a short shadow person that stops and boom, takes off in the other direction. And it hits him. Wait a minute. It wasn't a quote unquote deep, dark, creepy shadow person, that I saw when I was a kid. It was myself, just years apart from each other. So it's in one part a doppelganger story, although it's not, because it's not some sort of being or entity that's trying to mimic him. It was himself at two different points in time and came off as a shadow. That's the big question. Why did it come off as a shadow? He just wasn't fully tuned into it. Everything is, there's a couple different things going here. Everything is frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. So he wasn't fully tuned into that moment. kind of like a radio dial, like old school radio dial, where you had to really kind of fine tune the band to get the signal clear. If you're a little bit before, a little bit after, it's all kind of distorted, scratchy, staticky, that sort of thing. And that's kind of what this was. Remember, it's always has to do with the way we take in the light to our eyes. We only see into a very narrow band of the spectrum. So Christina asked me about benevolent stories, and so I shared one, a couple of them actually. She on the reel shared one of those stories, and I was happy that she did so because of this idea. I've had a couple people reach out to me about event out west here just over the weekend, and there were people there talking about shadows being all dark, evil, nasty, nefarious, dark is the dark, evil, all that stuff. And so I was like, wait, that's not my experience. I've known shadows that were actually good. Yeah. And a couple that I shared there, one was friend Kat. She's at a abandoned abbey in Ireland, and she'd been searching around, looking around up on I guess it was the second floor. She's walking down the stairs, slips, and she's about to fall on her butt and slide down the stairs, maybe break a leg or something. But a hand reaches out and grabs her and saves her. Now, there was nobody up there with her, although her sister said that from below she saw a hooded shadow figure walking around up there. And first she was concerned about this, but the hand had reached out and saved her from the fall. So yeah, it's not your classic, shadow, dark, evil entity. It's not that, right? Even though it came off shadowy in nature, it was the way somebody was able to see the spirit of a monk of the abbey. Okay. Some of these shadows are just human spirits that aren't fully manifesting as an apparition. A good friend, Rob Guttrow, talks about, his aunt. She had passed away. She had been passed away for a while, but she showed up in his bedroom one night as a shadow, wanting him to deliver a message to his mother for her. Well, for one, Rob's a good friend. I trust him with my life. He's a psychic medium. He does a lot of pet rescue, all this stuff. He's very, very in tune. But I trust him, through and through. And I'm sorry, but his aunt is not a mean, nasty, nefarious person. She just didn't have enough energy to manifest, or whatever was going on there in that moment. I mean, yeah, your great grandma showing up at the end of your bed at night is not trying to do you harm. She's probably just trying to visit, right? The other one that I shared there on Christina's show was the one. So very sick boy. He was young. He'd been born with something. They were trying to figure out what was going on with him. They kept going to the doctors, going to the hospital, running different tests, all this stuff, and they couldn't. They thought the diagnosis was one particular thing. I don't recall it off the top of my head. It was some long medical term, of course. He was like 3-4 years old, something like this. And the mother, for a while, was seeing this shadow being walk into the room. And she was thinking it was a harbinger of death. Like, oh my gosh, he's not going to make it. So going back to the doctors, of course. And again, they're going to run through the same tests. Well, then suddenly the doctor says, well, wait a minute. Stops, and turns his head, and then turns back around, says, let's run these other tests. And they did. They ran those other tests, discovered that the original diagnosis was wrong. They figured out what was going on with the boy, prescribed him the right stuff, got him the right treatment. Boom, he's fine. Shadow person disappeared. Never saw the shadow again. Now, the mother, this is not me. This is not my analysis. This is the mother. To her, she felt that even though she couldn't see the shadow in that moment, she could feel the energy there with the doctor, and believed that it was that shadow entity that was showing up there in the bedroom had come to the doctor's office and whispered into the doctor's ear what was going on, the tests that needed to be run to figure out what was going on. That's the mother. So, yeah, some of these are actually just benevolent. They can be a lot of different things. Like I said, they could be a human spirit that doesn't fully manifest as an apparition. They could be some sort of interdimensional being. My very first experience after going through some hypnotic regression would deduce that it was a being that was from another, they called another space, really was another dimension. It was here basically on a research mission to study humanity, and it was assigned to my room to study a human child at night. There we go. Um, some of these are extraterrestrial. Some of these are ETs. You see a lot of similarities between extraterrestrial stories and shadow person stories, especially with the ones that are like at night. Woke up at night and saw a shadow in my bedroom, or woke up in the middle of the night and saw, the ET in the room. So very, very similar type stories. Some of these are light beams. You hear those stories of, at the hospital deathbed scene. And sometimes people will see light beams by the bed. Other times people will see dark beams by the bed. And they're like, well, that must mean they're going to the bad place, right? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Again, it comes down to the way that our eyes perceive light. And so we only see light on a certain narrow band of the spectrum. So if it is a light beam, that light could be on a wavelength so high that we're just not even seeing it. We just don't see it at all. And we're just seeing the core of the body. And this is what I always throw out there about this. Caveat, don't try this at home. I have to say that. But what happens if you stare at a light bulb too long? When you're first looking at it, you see all the light. Stare at it too long, you no longer see the light, and you just see a dark silhouette. The same type of concept here. So yes, very well could be a light beam. We just don't see the light from it because it's beyond what we can actually see. Some of these are astral projections. We talked about time slips. Some of these are time slips. And we see them all different types of day. People really get spooked by the waking up in the middle of the night and seeing the thing in the bedroom. But we see them all different times of day in all different scenarios, walking down the hall, walking through the living room, out in the woods, everywhere. So, all right. So that probably was a little bit more than I wanted to cover on that particular topic, but there we go. So another interesting thing that popped up here just recently, a bit of a different topic, but Easter Island. Here's the Moai in the sunset. What I thought was really fascinating, new science that has come out from Easter Island, genetic testing that has been done there. And this result that came back addressed what they called the ecocide population collapse theory. And it also addressed the idea of trans-Pacific voyages, like way back in antiquity. So basically the idea of the ecological suicide is that because they're on the island there, that they were very irresponsible with their resources, and because they cut down so many trees and what have you, that they basically obliterated their own society. Kind of like what we're doing today. We're being very irresponsible. Somehow we're able to maintain. We need to be careful though. But in this genetic testing that they did, they actually showed that no, that really wasn't the case at all. The data did not contain any evidence of a population collapse in the 1600s. That was a time frame of this theory, is that there was overpopulation, mismanagement of resources during the 1600s, and then by the time they interacted with Europeans in 1722, they had their population had significantly depleted, but they didn't find any evidence of that. What the one scientist said here, this is a quote: "Our genetic analysis shows a stably growing population from the 13th century through to European contact in the 18th century. This stability is critical because it directly contradicts the idea of a dramatic pre-contact population collapse." So that's interesting. Here's science debunking a previous theory. which is important. And it'd be nice if they could debunk some of the other stuff that's out there, but there's narrative, of course. But the next one is important, and maybe, well, I'll go down that route. But this one's important. The next piece of this, that they were able to show and confirm trans-Pacific voyages. And in this specific direction, they found that about 10% of the Rapa Nui gene pool has an indigenous American origin. But more importantly, they were able to infer both populations met before Europeans arrived on the island and in the Americas. So in other words, people from Easter Island and people from South America intermingling together before the Europeans ever got involved. So it's long been held that they would not have had the technology to build boats that could ferry them from Easter Island to South America, or vice versa, or the indigenous population of South America, like the Incas, coming to Easter Island. It's long been held that no, they couldn't have built boats like that. Well, apparently they did. And so they were like, if there was any intermingling, it had to be after Europeans came, because Europeans had the boats. Kind of arrogant, right? Well, here we go. There was intermingling before Europeans showed up. Now, the distance between Easter Island and South America is 2,300 miles. That's not that's not a small voyage. That's not a small trip. And when we did the Antarctica class a few weeks back, and we talked about the Shackleton expedition and how they got from Elephant Island to South Georgia Island in a lifeboat, 800 miles. That's where it starts making, okay, humans, when they set their mind to it, they can really accomplish some amazing things. Somehow those guys made it 800 miles through storms. What was it, 17 days to get from Elephant Island to South Georgia Island, 800 miles. And now we're talking about Easter Island to South America, 2,300 miles in what? What did they use? What was the boat? Okay, and that's the thing that so many people have always wanted. Well, it couldn't happen. They didn't have the boats. They didn't have the seafaring capabilities to be able to do that. They even in the Mediterranean area, they've long held that more ancient seafarers held close to the shoreline, so they could see the land, and they didn't get out too far because they didn't have the technology with their boats to be able to just go right across. And yet they found here recently, I think it was a couple months ago now, there was one of those ancient boats that was much further out into the Mediterranean waters than what they had previously believed. So it's like, okay, here's evidence that no, they didn't just stick to the shores. They went across too. So when we start, and this is important, because when we start talking about the migration of humans across the world, remember, we had for the longest time here in America this idea of Clovis first. Now that's largely been debunked, because we have found many sites that have been older than the Clovis culture. But the whole idea that humans came across the Bering land bridge at the very top of the continent, and then they had to wait for the ice packs to melt down enough before they could filter down into North America and South America. Well, that's widely been debunked, because we have found other sites that are much older than when those would have melted. The oldest one it's controversial, but it's there. There was in the San Diego area, mastodon and humans together 120,000 years ago. It's like, oh, wait a minute. So then the question is, how did they get over here? It must have been by a boat or something, some fashion to get over here. And yet, a lot of our traditional history and archaeology tries to say that no, they didn't have that seafaring capability. Well, obviously they did, because somehow, some way, those people got over here, and now this is helping to prove that, which is a very good thing. So, all right. That is going to do it here for our live stream this evening. I want to thank all those who joined us down in the chat room tonight. There were several of you down there, had some fantastic comments. Really appreciate that. Those that are part of the Connected Universe portal are time travelers. Stay with us, because we have the after show coming up here. Those that are listening to the podcast version of this later, please join us again every Wednesday night, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, connecteduniverseportal.com. And hey, if you guys want to join us for the after show, sign up. I got the link right down there in the description. Yeah, and Jack's already on it. Till next time, time really exists.